Chapter 4. The shadows were just starting to grow long. This time of year the cerulean blue hues of the afternoon Galimarian sky grew deeper and deeper, until they reluctantly yielded the deepest of crimson, gold, and ginger, arriving just before the fall of night. Though night hadn't yet arrived, one could already see the outlines of two moons revolving around Galimar. Ida was a soft, pale blue, whereas Jenipar was more ruddy in color. Once the black of night fell, lights from hundreds of colonies populating both moons could be seen. But it was the middle of the summer months in this hemisphere, so night was a few hours away. The ocean breeze, drifting past Eobak and Ruavu, was both refreshing and relaxing. The children were off enjoying their time with schoolmates, so the two lovers enjoyed time well spent with each other. Sitting on a blanket stretched out on the ground, Eobak leaned his back against a large hardwood tree behind him. Ruavu sat to his right, facing him, with her knees bent to her side, leaning her own back against his leg, which was bent at the knee to support her. The two looked at each other, simply luxuriating in the time spent enjoying their respective soulmates. Eobak was wearing a white, open-chested, long-sleeved shirt, which hung loosely from his shoulders. It was tucked lightly into his black pants. Ruavu was wearing a summer dress, equally open since it was summer, and the warmth inspired a free and easy spirit. Off in the distance, there was another family enjoying the afternoon as well. The young son from that family was playing a stringed instrument, perfectly rounding out the scene where, if you concentrated hard enough, hopefully time would stand still. Next to Eobak and Ruavu was a small wicker basket containing a simple array of treats and a bottle of wine. Eobak gazed into the eyes of his mate, and Ruavu did the same, resting her hand on the exposed muscular chest of her husband. One of the more notable features of Galimarian people were their eyes. Normally, there was no color in the pupils. Aside from the whites, the center of the eye was nothing but deep pools of ebony, seemingly beckoning you to spend time gazing into them deeply in search of the soul. No one on Galimar had any color to their eyes, with the distinct exception of when someone was in love. As all intelligent life knows, love inspires poets to write legends, choirs to sing sonnets, and artists to mold and shape the world around them in a way which somehow expresses the intoxicating ebb and flow of warmth that love engenders. The flow of chemistry between two who love one another is undeniable to any who have experienced such a blessing. But in the case of Galimarians, something truly special happens. When the mind of a man or woman on this planet is bathed in the hormones which only come with deep love, the bottomless pools of raven black give way to eyes colored with a light shade of blue. Eobak and Ruavu were looking at each other with eyes that revealed the truth of how they both felt. After a while, a slight smile broke out on Eobak's face. "There's my blue love," he said, recalling a verse to a well-known melody.
"Only for you, my beloved mate,"
said Ruavu as she traced her fingers back and forth over the peaks and valleys on Eobak's chest. After allowing time to casually drift by, and after refilling the glasses with more wine, Eobak was the first to speak. "I have a question for you."
"What would you like to know, my love?"
"Ru," he said, calling his wife the pet name only he used for her. "It appears that council approval will probably happen with Krelon signing on to the mission. My question has to do with you and this mission. Do you still feel the same way? Are you still okay with going?" Ruavu cast her gaze to the side and regarded a brilliantly colored small-winged insect, which had landed on a flower near them.
"There was a time when you started planning this mission when I might have answered that question differently. Early on, when it became apparent this mission was one designed for entire families, and when it became evident ours was going to be one of them, I wasn't so sure I wanted to go. We later had our 2 children, and as they grew, there were times when I wondered if it would be wise to take them with us. But then, Ruavu paused as if she was thinking, I started looking at where we would be going. I started to think about the adventure we would have, and how amazing it would be to experience a world which had never been visited by us before. In time, I came to realize this would be something our children would never forget, and might be something which could easily channel their young minds toward explorations like their fathers. I decided I wanted them to have the same respect and dignity their father enjoyed. So, this is something I want them to be a part of. Speaking personally, it took me some time to warm up to the idea of traveling in space for years on end. But when I learned of the plan to use pods while we are actually traveling, then it seemed like it wouldn't be that bad.
I'm glad to hear that, said Eobach. In times past, a person in my position would be looking at spending very long days, weeks, months, even years away from home. Now that we're going to be using the new builder-robot technology to build the Starship, and since it will be completed in only about 2 months, I'm not going to be away from home nearly as long as I would have been before.
I'm glad of that, my husband. I don't think I'd be able to stand to be away from you that long anyway.
That's part of why I wanted you to go. If you didn't, and you stayed here on Galimar while I went on this voyage, it would be 20 years of life I'd miss out on with you and the kids. They're growing up so fast now. Before you know it, Nathan is going to be hitting the age of enlightenment and receiving his or her amulet. I just don't want to miss that. Do you understand what I mean?
I certainly do, echoed Ruavu. When your child reaches the age of enlightenment, and it becomes apparent which they are going to be, a girl or a boy, well, that is just something I want to experience with you there. I don't want to settle with having to tell you about it after the fact. When Nathan comes of age and reveals his or her gender to us at the celebration of Hin, we're going to have quite a party.
That's for sure, agreed Eobach, smiling. As the two of them gently stroked the exposed skin of the other, a brief period of silence was enjoyed between them. A question came to his mind. Do you think you know what Nathan is going to be? One of the ways Galimarian biology differs from the biologies of most species they have encountered is in their gestation and development. While most species develop gender-specific characteristics while still in the womb, Galimarian children physically develop very slowly. The time spent in the womb ends up being only about 3 months, but the child is born with no gender. It isn't until about 50 years later that the body begins to develop characteristics which indicate what gender the child will eventually become. It won't be for about another 40 years until the transition into one gender or the other is complete. Tests can be done early on, of course, to find out what gender the child will eventually become, but most just choose to be surprised. Not really, responded Ruavu. I mean, I think Nathan is going to be a boy, but I'm not really sure. I'm pretty excited to find out, though. A boy? Really? I was thinking girl, Eobach laughed. Then again, I can't really say Nathan is into things that are classically female.
Ruavu looked down, contemplating her next words. One thing I will say, though, is I am truly blessed to be married to the man you are. All of our children truly have a good role model to live up to, regardless of their gender. Staring at the young boy in the distance, Eobach corrected the word used by Ruavu.
You mean both.
It was a statement more than a question. Ruavu smiled to herself as she continued staring at the small design on her sundress. No, I mean all. From her peripheral vision, Ruavu saw that Eobach continued to look off into the distance. After a few moments, he slowly turned his head toward his wife. She turned toward her husband, and it was at this moment when it was impossible to tell where the blue of the sky ended and the blue of her eyes began. Eobach's complexion changed.
You mean?
Yes, my love. You're going to be a father again.
said Ruavu, with an expression which could only come from one who was with child. She was glowing at the expression of love coming from her husband now, and when he brought her near and kissed her tenderly, she melted into his embrace. Wrapping her arms around his body, the two became one. The world could evaporate, the sun could stop shining, but they wouldn't notice. There was a universe of love between them, and they both believed no one would ever know the exquisite delight they felt at this very moment.